I would like to welcome everybody to an hour talk about design culture. Danish design has evolved over the years and remains a significant contributor to design at large. Personally, I do believe that good design contributes to the fact that the Danes are amongst the happiest people in the world today. And not only does it contribute to happiness, it also contributes to the Danish economy. 8% of Danish exports come from design. And in 2019, that amounted to almost 13 billion Canadian dollars. And in comparison, I can tell you that the Canadian exports to the same product was a little bit less than half of that, despite of the fact that we in Canada we are about 7 times more people. So relatively speaking, you could say that Denmark has a significantly more well-evolved design culture in numbers. Today, we would like to discuss how we create a healthy and vibrant design culture with focus on Canada and Denmark. So I would like to introduce our panel. We have the 2 wonderful panelists from Denmark. Thank you for spending your Saturday nights with us. And we have 3 from Canada. Lene Tanggaard is CEO of the Kolding Design School, one of Europe's leading design schools. Lene is also professor of psychology at the University of Aalborg and co-director of the Center for Qualitative Studies, a network of more than 90 professors and researchers. Lene serves as on numerous boards and is the regional editor of the International Journal of Qualitative Research in Education. Lene, would you say a few words about your wonderful school? Welcome on board.
Yes, and first of all, thank you for inviting me. We call Design School Kolding the world's smallest university. We have 350 students. We grew out of a craft tradition, and we are now a university with professors and PhD students. And we have, I think, 3 guiding values. And I've brought with me a film to show you and let my students tell the story. But we believe that this design can contribute to a democracy, to increasing the value of life, creating better lives. And also, one of our main goals today is to contribute to a greener and more sustainable society. So let's see the film. It explains more than I can say.
Jeg har altid været meget interesseret i at løse problemer og skabe forandringer. Og det er egentlig det, vi beskæftiger os med på Designskolen.
Vi reflekterer, og vi udvikler.
Hvordan det er, vi lever. Hvordan kan vi gøre livet bedre?
Fremtiden skal være bæredygtig. Vi ser og vi lytter til menneskers behov og inddrager dem i løsninger, vi skaber. Vi fokuserer på fællesskabet, og alle skal leve godt.
Vi arbejder med rigtige mennesker og med nye ambitiøse virksomheder, der er drevet af passionen
for fremtiden.
Det er ikke et nemt studie.
Og vi arbejder hårdt.
På trods af mange udfordringer er der en helt fantastisk energi og kreativitet. Alle timer i døgnet.
Vi mærker, og vi føler. Bekymringer for at flytte fra storbyen.
Men her rykker folk sammen på en helt anden måde, og du føler dig aldrig alene.
Det er noget helt særligt.
It's an internationally oriented school with researchers and students from all over the world.
Hvis jeg skulle sige, hvem Designskolen egentlig er for, så er den for dig, som vil skabe forandring. Og ikke bare fylde verden med nye ting. Den er for dig, der vil have nye muligheder.
Ramme flere nerver og ikke løbe den samme rute hver dag.
Og sådan virkelig forandre den verden, som vi lever i.
Thank you very much, Lene. Next, we have Casper Peterson from also from Denmark. Casper is third-generation master cabinet maker and CEO of PP Møbler, a company that arguably makes the best furniture coming out of Denmark today, still using the skills of the traditional skills of the cabinet makers. Casper studied mathematics and physics at University of Copenhagen, trained as cabinet maker at Rud Rasmussen, and is a top graduate from Copenhagen Business School. Casper, please give us a few words about your company.
Yes, thank you, Arne, and thank you for having me on this panel. It's a pleasure. Our goal for our company is quite simple. We really just want to make the best possible furniture. And we also would really like to make very sustainable furniture, and we believe very strongly that making very, very high quality products and also using as natural and clean raw materials as possible is a very important part of being sustainable. I might add that in my opinion, the term of sustainable production is one that we are quite far away from in general. So we like to put focus on honesty in the development and production of products. That's our goal.
Thank you very much, Casper. We are so happy to have you here. And Peter Fleming, head of furniture at Sheridan College. Peter received the prestigious Pre-Day Bronfman Award of Excellence in Craft in 2000, and his work has been extensively exhibited in Canada, United States, China, and Korea. And as a curiosity, I can tell you that one of Peter's students has ended up working in Denmark, of all places. Peter, it is your time to talk a little bit about your work.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Arne, and also for the support of the Danish consulate and all my fellow panelists. It's been great to participate in this. Sheridan's craft and design program started essentially in 1967 under the recommendation of Design Canada to develop a school that would focus on producing designers for industry. So there's a long history involved there. I have a tremendous respect for all the work that PP Møbler has done, and obviously in our furniture program of the work that I've just shown of our graduates. We focus on designing and fabricating in tandem. So designing through making and thinking through making is really the focus of our program. So we see that as a sort of feedback loop. So we're intensely involved in all areas of craft, in ceramics, textiles, furniture, industrial design, and glass, and often work collaboratively across those fields. So I'm delighted to be able to talk a little bit about our approach and thoughts on design in Canada and Denmark today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. We are really happy to have you on board. Kelly Buffy, co-founder and creative director of AKB Architects. Kelly is recognized as one of Canada's leading architects in the private residential realm. In 2018, Kelly was awarded fellowship to the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada for her professional excellence in design, and this is one of the highest honors the Institute can confer upon a member. Kelly, welcome on board, and please tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction and also for the invitation to be here. This has been a great group of panelists that we've met previously, so it's a joy. As Arne mentioned, I'm principal of a boutique-style architecture firm in Toronto known as AKB Architects, which I co-founded with my partner, Robert Kostelek, in 2004. We work on a broad range of building typologies, but our focus is really on the residential realm. And what I love about architecture and why I ultimately chose this career path is because it allows me to have a positive impact on society. And it also allows me to be able to express myself creatively. So I've always had a yearning to really enhance the quality of people's lives. And I find it really rewarding to be able to do that through my work. and we approach the work as a form of art for humanity. So we're always trying to capture the poetic and the intangible sort of qualities of space through our projects.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I have had the pleasure of meeting many of your clients, and they all seem to be such nice, happy people. Maybe it's because of the architecture you built for them. Joanne Chan, welcome on board. Joanne is Principal and Creative Director of SDI Design. Joanne has created many dynamic, beautiful work environments to facilitate teamwork, productivity, and creativity. Joanne recently completed a stunning new Canadian head office for the Danish pharmaceutical giant, Nordic. Joanne, please tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you very much. This is very exciting. This is my second time being on this panel, and this is definitely a very interesting topic for designers. So SDI is a studio in Toronto that focuses on workplace. Many of our clients are corporation or government. So a lot of our focuses are about the people in the space. So one of our philosophy is working around the human approach, the designing around the human. So a lot of our work itself is actually really focusing on not just the people who are living in it, but also supporting it, as well as the business that actually function in it. So it has to be a positive return. On top of that, we have to incorporate all the technology. So innovation is really important in the workplace, and we try to learn everything we can as fast as we can. So there's this sort of balance between the human and the technology within the space. So we try to bring the human approach out and also try to minimize the impact of what you see as technology. Last but not least, obviously, is really the sustainability of our projects. We try not to just look at the sustainability of the products, but also how we use space. So people don't feel that there is a much more democratic approach to space. So people don't feel like, I am the little sister or the poor sister that got a worse office versus the other. So it's really a democratic approach of looking at not only material and products, but also space itself. So the studio is really about a dozen people, and we really, really want to focus on storytelling. So a lot of us spend a lot of time in the design process and really focus on the materiality as well as the form of the space, and layering on top is the interaction between the human and the space.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Joanne. Thank you all, you wonderful panel. It is awesome to have you here. We have a lot of ground to cover, so let's dig in. First, I would like to talk discussion about the importance of education and training of people when developing a design culture. Casper, could you comment on why you feel there's no point in educating designers if we do not educate cabinet makers, and also talk a little bit about why you think it's important to pay these cabinet makers a decent wage?
Yes, thank you, Arne. Well, first of all, to me, I mean, making a good design, you really need knowledge of the materials that you work with, and a lot of materials. In order to know their properties and how they behave when you work with them, you really need years of experience by hand. So you have to have really good, enthusiastic craft people with many years of experience with working with the materials in order to really understand the properties of the materials, and hereby the possibilities with the materials, which of course is key to any design. And on the topic of the wages and how we pay craft people, I think it's really, really important to not only just keep and save the craft. It's not something that is just a romantic thing that we need to save craft. We also need to develop craft and bring it into the new times. And in order to do so, we need constant, constantly to have young people going into the field of craft. And in order to attract skillful and talented young people, you need a certain standard of living. You need a perspective so that you know the young people can see themselves having a decent life, working as a craft person. Otherwise, and this I think we have seen many places around the world, that you can have a downward spiral, where you simply lose the craft, because as people get older and they fade away, no one has learned their craft and have been able to take over. So I think wages in craft is a key component to keeping the standards very high.
I think, Lene, maybe you as head of one of Europe's top design schools, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you feel education plays in the overall culture of Danish design.
Sure, I can, and I agree with Casper that I think that the sort of the way that design has become prominent in Denmark and valued is because of the high quality of the objects. And the quality arises because of very skilled workers. So it's extremely important. And we still, as I said, we're a design university, but we're still a craft-based school. So our students really need to train also the basic skills. And then and it is a difficult thing, but we add sort of the academic practice as well, because we believe that design approaches and methods can be used in a variety of areas in society. So we work with municipalities and regions and a lot of different companies where designers use design to create a better work space, as Johan was talking about. So it's not only the objects in itself, it's also using the discipline to really enhance the way schools are built, the way workplaces are designed, the way elder care takes place in a municipality. So we are developing and trying to find the sweet spot between the crafts and the academic discipline, and it is extremely difficult and fun.
Right. I know when we talked the other day, you mentioned what an incredible dynamic relationship you have to the Danish industry, and in fact, some of them on your board. I think it'd be interesting for our listeners to learn a little bit about how that interaction works and why it's so important for both the industry and for the school.
Yeah, I think it's a basic component of what we call the Danish model in Denmark, where it's not only my school, but all schools in Denmark have close relations to the environment, the local community. And as universities, we collaborate very closely with industries and also the public sector. I have a board at our school, and we have a representative of 14 members coming from Danfoss, Grundfos, Lego, Ego, various big companies, and also small design bureaus. And it ensures that our education and our school stays relevant. We can be the place for some of the companies to experiment with things. We can create courses together. We can have our students coming out and get work experience and returning to the school. And in the dynamics there become better designers. So I think it is extremely important, and it explains why we have I think a very flexible structure around education in Denmark. And as you might know, in Europe, the whole program for lifelong learning was actually named after Grundtvig, who founded the Danish Folkehøjskoler, the folk high schools, which were meant as schools for the farmers to get education. So we have this, you know, education is part of our culture, and everyone is quite highly educated.
So it is, the Danish model is part that education is so important. We have no natural resources to speak of. So as a society, we have to have the value added. So the Danish state pays for all education through university, through the technical schools. And on top of that, each student gets a monthly stipend to pay for basic food and living. So that means that it is an investment Denmark makes as a society, but it really also makes really good sense from an economical point of view, because there is a lot of value added export coming out of Denmark. Peter, let us hear a little bit about what's happening at Sheridan College. I know you have the largest number of art programs in Canada, and as head of the furniture at the college, can you tell us a little bit about the role of education in the Canadian design culture?
One of the ways that education can contribute to a design culture is also the fact that, thankfully, not all of our graduates are successful in their field. They go on to become aficionados or appreciators and are involved in design culture in general, in many other ways other than just being professional designers. And I think one of the challenges we're always going to have is that if you can't see yourself reflected in design culture, you don't engage in it. And so, in many ways, the more successful designers we have, the more that will be seen to be a viable career choice. We have relatively limited support in Canada for design initiatives. I know when I go to the International Contemporary Furniture Fair or the Stockholm Furniture and Lighting Fair, there's always a massive support from other governments for their individual trade missions that show work there and so on. So our support from our government is relatively minimal. But nevertheless, I think education really has a major role in being able to change that thinking. I think we also need to respect organizations like DesignTO and Azure Magazine and so on that have, for many years, really fostered an awareness of design and appreciation of it, so that the more that becomes part of a mainstream culture that isn't simply reporting on dance or music or opera or visual arts. I think that's a really great benefit there. I would certainly love to see a greater level of financial support for education in all fields in Canada.
You're touching upon something very interesting, right? And it is a little bit, Casper mentioned that to me also. If you don't have a demand for good design, there's no point in educating anybody, because it still has to be a business and you have to be able to sell the product and to make money on it. So, and you brought that up, Peter, how we're doing this. DesignTO is definitely part of that. The Core Magazine, Open Mail, deals with it a lot. And I was wondering, Line, if maybe you could talk a little bit about what is happening in Denmark in order to create such a demand.
I will say, before painting a too beautiful picture, we are sometimes struggling with creating that demand for good design, but it is there. We are highly regulated, so we actually only educate as many as the market can absorb. And that's also part of the constant sort of coordination and collaboration. But I think the best thing to do is to have these partnerships with. I think I really believe in the value of an open school, so that you don't become a closed thing within something, but that you are constantly sort of learning from others, the value of our students going out and coming back is so great. And also, as the film showed, we have a lot of international students coming to Denmark, and it is extremely important because they are really good at seeing what Danish design is. You know, sometimes when you're part of it, you can't really see it. But they come because of our pedagogical model. They come because of they want to work with inclusion or democracy or play and creativity. But I think the best thing is to have this awareness of the value of openness, learning from each other, daring to take risks, also sometimes to move, to let design have the role as designers, also the role as those who are creating a desirable future. Relating back to the topic of today, and the whole thing around sustainability right now, I think it is an extremely important topic for designers. As Casper said, it's about making things good so that they last. Right. It's about honesty, but it is also about sometimes challenging engineers or sometimes economic to say that we have to remember that it is people who are going to create change. So we can make a lot of perfect organizations and we can know a lot about sustainability, but if we can't make people move in a desirable direction, nothing will happen. And I think that's where design really plays a role as a discipline that can connect with others. And this thing about people, always starting with people and with materials.
No, it's a good point. I think so. Yes, and but I would really like us to talk a little bit about how we create the demand that Peter started talking about. Casper, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just have a comment on exactly that, because I think actually, you know, if you look at the demographics of the world today, the middle class has been growing a lot worldwide over the past many or few decades at least. And as soon as the population reaches a certain level of wealth, I think that there will be a natural demand for design, because design is something that gives you more quality to your life. And then I think it's also important, of course, to remember and think about that designers they have to create products and they have to create awareness of their products. So they have to show the world what is possible for the future. I think that's really important. And one of the reasons why I think design is important is exactly that designers has a kind of responsibility or a role in our society. They kind of pick the materials that we use, and they decide a lot of things about the materials that we surround ourselves with. So it's just, you know, it's important for designers to show the world what is possible for the future life.
I think, Joanna Kelly, what is your experience with design culture? I know, Joanne, you went to Denmark together with Canadian interior designers, and you've seen some of the things that happens in Denmark. And you made the beautiful offices for a Danish company in Toronto. What do you think we can learn about the approach to in the Danish design idea to commercial office design?
Right. So I guess there's levels of understanding what design culture is. So the panelists started talking about education. So a lot of us are not really groomed to become designers when we're younger. We're people that are creative. So I think what differs, when I went to Denmark, I felt that design was more a lifestyle, like Lena talked about. Design is food. They immerse themselves into a lifestyle that it's not necessary they go to work and then they become a designer, they go to a cafe and they drink coffee. So this idea about embracing what the nature gives us, and also what aesthetic could give us in terms of that emotional attachment to design, I don't think it's really well educated in our society. So what our job is in Canada as designers is to not only address the expectation of financial impact. So of course we have to make sure that it's within budget and within the expectation, but the idea of converting through experience rather than aesthetics. So we tell the users, tell us your experience, what you want in this space to feel like, to be like, so that you can actually connect with the space. Because when you feel better as a human, you do better job, do better work. So we already know that when you want to feel comfortable, lower the light and have a bit of a rest with your eyes. So light levels, tactility, objects, architectural scale and form. Those things are really important in our sort of design language, but it's our job to actually educate the users. It could be an office manager, it could be a CEO, it could be it could be a marketing director. They need to understand design doesn't just translate to aesthetics. It translates to the emotional side of the human being. So that's how we approach design in the corporate world, because all they see is performance. And our expectation is that we have to give you the performance as a minimum, but we should layer it with experience as well.
Wonderful. That's really good to hear. Kelly, you have worked both in France and in Canada on projects, and I'm curious to hear from you how it has been to work with the trade in Europe compared to Canada.
It's been quite different. I would say we do have some very good craftspeople in Canada, but we're a much younger country with much less heritage. So the variety and the level of craft here is certainly not the same as what we've experienced in Paris. And I think it's, when I was introduced to the sub-trades on site, I was not only introduced to them by name, but also they would provide a history of the company. They talk about the generations of their family who had been in that craft, how they had learned from them, and how they're now carrying that forward. And they're very proud, very, very proud. Even I was outside on the street looking up. Someone was holding up it was just a window blind fabric. There was a couple different colors that they were holding up the builder at the window. I was trying to see from a distance which I thought would look best, and a passerby on the street stopped to give me her opinion, which is very indicative of the Parisian culture. There, everyone is very open and educated really about design and really values design. So I found that it just permeates the full culture, the trades, the citizens, the architects, government, everyone's supporting it.
It's a bigger training program for the cabinet makers and the trade in general.
Yes.
And I see that also in when you're building in Canada, sometimes it's difficult to get good trade because
Yes.
there's no really good formal training that they have to go.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that just maybe very briefly, just the concept of trade education and respect for trades. And in Canada, it's, we've gone through, generations of striving of the middle class to get a university education and then go into a white collar job. And that is something that, we see the fallacy of that now, really, because the security of that kind of job is not really all that secure anymore. Whereas, we're always going to need to have individuals that know how to build, know how to design with sensitivity, know how to, approach materials with the correct understanding of them, the way Casper was talking about. And so as a culture and as a country, I think there needs to be a shift in understanding about what the value is of work, and how work and the satisfaction of being in a trade of some kind actually transfers to exactly the same kind of pride that Kelly's talking about.
It's really important that the government actually be involved, both government and legislation, in helping us educate people to really understand the value of design. And we have building codes, and we have our national we don't have a national policy here, but countries such as Denmark do. And those are not only meant to sort of, the building code is not only about protecting public health, but it can also be used to set aspirational targets around sustainability and engagement and efficiency. it could be much more integrated into our society. We do have an advocacy group right now looking to get a national architecture policy in place, and I'm hopeful that we do get one. But having so, I think it allows us. It will educate the country really.
But also, don't you agree? In Canada, we don't have a circular economy. So the people who are in the trades don't really know what the design or architecture is really. There's a lack of connection of collaboration. So there's a very segmented way of looking at projects. Whereas when I went to Casper's factory, everything is very fluid. So the way we actually are educated in Canada, I feel that we're not really utilizing the organization that we independently created. So the colleges are not talking to the university, they're not talking to the associations are not talking to each other. I think only until recently, the ARITO started talking to OAA. So this idea about collaboration maybe can actually fast track the incubation of design ideas, because I think what we've learned from technology is if you put everybody together, we probably have some really good ideas, and we probably have a lot of throwaway ideas, but we don't put people together enough like the way we're doing right now. And I feel that Canada, and I'm an immigrant, I come here and I'm very appreciative of the Western culture, because they're much more open than the Asian culture. So having the ability to have a voice is really important, but I don't think we have enough channels to collaborate and funnel the voice into one. So therefore, we're not as strong because we're independent. So if we could do it together, perhaps we can actually create that circular economy that helps not only the designer, the architects, the educator, but also the trades to feel that their work is valued and they should be rewarded and encouraged to grow their profession. And I think that's part and parcel of what we're lacking in Canada.
I think I'll just touch upon a little bit. I think it's good business to do, and it has certainly been good business for Denmark. I know that Denmark very early on put some very stringent building codes into effect, starting already back in the 70s, and that's and the government went out and gave subsidies to businesses to come up with new solutions, and it forced businesses to come out with new products, because otherwise they couldn't sell anything. And that today has become a very healthy business for Denmark to export.
I just wanted to mention, Lena had a really great point earlier about trying to find the sweet spot between craft and academics, and obviously there's a real symbiotic relationship there, and I think that would be similar in terms of the collaboration between schools in industry and also between trade associations and design associations. Ideally it would be a much more holistic approach, and I think it really challenges us all to be more collaborative and have those discussions. We participate in some levels at Sheridan with relationships with industry as well, but again the level of I guess the expectation from our Ministry of Education is really not so much to create those levels. The research is deemed something that happens at universities as opposed to colleges, and I think that's a lost opportunity.
How do we apply technology today to come up with better and smarter solutions?
I'd love to hear from Casper on that point, because the connection between traditional craft and digital technology is something he's been very involved with for a number of years.
Casper.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I have a little bit of an example here. This is a piece for one of the Wiener designs that we produce, and I don't think I'm not sure if you can see it, but here are the joints of some very elaborate pieces of wood, big pieces of solid wood. And these joints are cut with a CNC computer-controlled machine. And that's a really good example where technology can help us a lot, because this is just not feasible to make by hand. It will never be as accurate as this. Whereas the overall shape of this, we can't really finish this shape on a machine. There we really need the manual work. So this is a good example of where we need both. And it's also, it's made of solid wood, which I believe is a key component for sustainable production.
Lena, do you have anything to add to this?
Yes, of course, it's an upcoming area, and some of our teachers at the school say that you have to go digital. There's nothing else. But you have to master the analog way of, you have to understand materials to be able to apply and benefit from digital technologies. But one of the things that we're doing, and it's actually in our fashion department, we are working with a software called Chloe 3D, and Christel Arnevik, who is our teacher in fashion, she's very keen on this, and basically you don't need to travel around the world anymore to show designs. You can go 3D and almost get the tactic feeling of the design. So of course that's a very good thing. So you minimize pollution traveling around the world. You can maybe even make better designs. So we're training our students very much in digital technologies, but we keep emphasizing that you need to be able to draw by hand before you can actually draw good digitally. So it's extremely interesting, and I think it's just the way it is now. We sometimes I even think we don't talk that much about digitalization because it's just there, and in Denmark we are one of the most digitalized societies in the world. So yeah. And it is, again, because the governments have emphasized it, invested in it, created an infrastructure so that it works. So it all comes down to commitment and engagement and collaboration, and then you can make anything.
Wonderful. Well, I think just one note, Casper, he sent a video this morning that we just put on the Danish Design website. It illustrates what you are just saying, Lena. So if you have a minute, go and check it out. How can Denmark and Canada work together to develop better design cultures? What can we do to learn from each other?
I think we are very eager. Canadian designers and architects and developers are looking for new ways to collaborate with other firms. We're willing to educate or be educated by others. And I think one of the things is to start working together. So I think we already have a good start at that point in time, like right now.
I think we in Denmark can learn a lot from Canada as well. Your embeddedness in nature, and we don't have that in Denmark. So there's a lot of things to learn.
Yeah, I think Canada in many respects is it's a Nordic country as well. There's a sensibility there, and we form this kind of interesting bridge between Scandinavian countries and the United States, just to the south of us. So there's a conservative approach to design in Canada in some ways, but it's also a responsible one, and I think increasingly it does. Lena was talking about how we don't even need to consider the importance of digital design anymore because it's so embedded in our education. In the same way as sustainability needs to be, has also been rolled into the kind of the mother approach to design. But I just wanted to briefly mention the whole concept of digital fabrication kind of democratizes the design process and the fabrication process of prototypes, which I think create a better sort of design culture, because those that have great ideas but maybe don't have exactly the skills to develop them fully can also do that through digital means.
I was thinking we do have a lot of students coming through our office that have worked in Denmark and other places around the world, and it does bring they do bring knowledge back with them to us directly through that means. So it's a very subtle maybe way. I think they are really benefiting though from those study abroad programs.
Yeah, I think also in Canada we benefit very much from immigrations from all over the world, and they each bring something. People, I know that in the building trade we have a lot of very well trained people from Eastern Europe, where they have the same kind of schooling that we have in the Nordic countries. And that helps us a lot. And a few years ago, there was this exhibition called True Nordic at the Gardner Museum, and they basically concluded Canadian design is Nordic design, and it is of course based upon immigrants that came from the Nordic countries many years ago, and with their craft they developed what we call Canadian design today to some extent. And of course that is a very rich resource. We have people from all over the world. We have a few questions, so maybe we should move on and answer some of the questions that we have received. I will read here. How do we take an unfortunate disposable mindset of North Americans and have them appreciate design? Good design is felt. How do we inform about a feeling to allow for decision making before the experience is felt? Anybody who wants to offer a comment on that?
Well, just a short comment on that is maybe trying to highlight what qualities can actually be achieved with good design and good craft, because I strongly believe that if you nail it down to economics, it's often much better investments to invest in high quality and good design, because it simply lasts longer and you appreciate it more and you'll keep it for longer and so on.
Well, one of the things I guess we have been influenced a lot by the American culture. We have a bit of an addiction to consumerism, I think, as Canada might say. But I think one of the things that we could probably, as leaders in the industry, from designers, architects, makers, we should advocate less is more. Using less to do more is really important, because if you flip through the magazine, the things that we gravitate is clean design. The thing we gravitate is tradition. The thing we gravitate is emotional attachment to objects. So I think there's a lot of learnings that is still happening because we are a young country, because we are from many different places. I'm Chinese, so a lot of the things that I value might be not the same as what my husband's value. He's German. So there's this idea of cultural collaboration and intersection that we might be able to, magnify what is less and what is good and what is quality and what is investment. So those things are, I think, it's an education process, which we are kind of doing full circle, because we started with education. Now we're ending with this, how do we stop consumerism? Is based on education. So if we educate the young children not to overindulge, something valuable is good quality, then they would not be consuming, plastics everywhere.
So that's a very good point. We have a question here from Robin Wilcox at DesignTO. Would love to hear everyone's thought on how we in Canada can get government support for design. This is a little political, so I would, this is to the Canadian panel. How do we in Canada get government support for design? How do we make the government do that?
I have one solution.
Okay.
We have to have designers being elected for parliaments, and then they will be the one deciding. It's actually, we have a discussion at our school, and it's not everybody who believes in it, but I think there's something we talk about, creating leaders in our school. So of course they have to become designers, but they also have to become leaders in some way, to actually go first sometimes, and also to choose, becoming directors and being elected so that they can form society.
Good.
I think also another point could be just confronting the politicians with the actual consequences of bad design and bad products, because it actually does have a lot of real implications to society.
There's one more question here. We've got a few more minutes. This is from Casper Peterson. So he sounds a little Danish. Maybe he is from, in fact, he is Canadian, but he has Danish parents. Culturally, it appears that Nordic countries, people are willing to pay for good design and its value versus design and built simply based on cost here. How do we get good design to align with cost-sensitive products? How do we do that? Because, I mean, that's a very good question, Casper. I don't know if you can answer.
Innovation.
Innovation.
And technology. So one of the things that we haven't addressed is when we have technology supporting our construction or build, it allows designers and architects and makers to have more time thinking about the solution of the problem. So one of the things about AI and machine learning, and I'm really excited about that, is if we're no longer stuck in creating working drawings or creating things that are more mundane that has to be done because it's required, we will allow ourselves to have more time. So innovation will let us have the idea of having more innovation, the idea of investing in innovation, the idea of promoting innovation is really important, because I just got an ad yesterday because I was talking about prefab, and I think my phone's listening. So Google is listening to me, and I want to do a prefab building. Shows me 7 options, and just by Google. And the idea about prefabrication doesn't necessarily translate to bad design. It doesn't equals to wasteful design. It could be something that we can retool our conversation in a language to understand that prefabrication is not a bad word, as long as it's sustainable, it's responsible, and it's creative. So I don't think that we have a straight answer, but from the question was, how do we connect the dot on cost and design? And I think innovation is the solution.
Yes, and I agree. And just to add, the whole tradition of Danish design, was built on the idea of making beautiful furniture available for the many. And that was part of making design culture, that everywhere, because everyone could afford to have these beautiful objects.
I would also like to add that it's just, important to stretch again. I think I repeat myself a little bit, but, let's stop having this constant focus on cost and trying to realize that there are other costs than the actual initial money to be spent. So sometimes you just have to, like Joanne mentioned, advocate for less is more. I think that's a really important point to work on.
Not everybody can afford to pay $1,000 for a dining chair or $20,000.
I'm not sure. I totally agree with that. Of course, not everybody can really afford that, but then they could simply, consider buying one secondhand or buying one good chair instead of 2 bad ones.
It would be interesting to sort of touch a little bit upon the budgetary. So you're referring to something like FDB Møbler, Lene.
Yes.
It's a Danish co-op. I would say most groceries in Denmark are sold through this co-op. And back in the 40s, I believe, they also started to make furniture. Børge Mogensen was the head of that, I believe. And it was done definitely, so the buyers, people that bought the groceries, they also owned the grocery store. So that's the idea. And it's the same thing with the furniture. They have restarted doing that. And I think that they have huge success with it. But I don't know exactly how the goods are produced, but they are definitely at a much lower price point. And it is good designs, and it is durable, and it is made in Europe. Do you know anything about this, Lena?
Yes, I do. And I think, and of course, I agree with Casper about the value of creating something very good and maybe a bit expensive, but then it lasts longer. But in reality, as you said, Anna, there's people who they are not there yet. So how can we sort of get them to value good design? And it is, I think, sometimes to make something that is really good and not too expensive. And I think that's why FDB has taken up this approach. I had an opportunity to talk at there was an opening of an Arne Jacobsen exhibition at Trapholt, our local museum in Kolding, and I read a lot about Arne Jacobsen, and the thing that he and some of the other great designers did was also that when they built, for example, the municipality house in Aarhus, where I live, the whole house was filled with Arne Jacobsen. Everything was Arne Jacobsen, so you couldn't enter there without being part of a design world. I think we need more of that, so that it's because you have to, as some of the questions also emphasize, you have to experience design to value design. So you have to, wow, that's why. Okay, then I would love to have something like that at home as well. So that's the democratic, the inclusive, I think, values of Danish design that we need to lift again, maybe.
Well, I just have to add to this one that actually all of the furniture in that town hall in Aarhus was actually designed by Hans Wegner. But he was
that was Wegner, yeah.
He was employed by Arne Jacobsen, which was his first assignment, actually.
Yes.
I think one of the challenges we have as a society is the stylistic shelf life of design that the general public seems to absorb. That it's their right to be able to refit their kitchen every 5 years, or and put that in landfill, or the concern about, do I want to live with my parents' furniture? Do I need to create a new world for myself, that sets me apart from my predecessors, and so, I think one of the things that good design does do, if you think about the work of Wegner, for example, there is a timelessness of that, which allows that to short circuit that loop of destruction. It does come as a real cost, and it's almost like an intergenerational cost that needs to be considered at, and that's one of Casper's arguments. It is very difficult to imagine spending $1,000 on a chair, and I make chairs, so but I would still love to be able to do that. So it's I think the fashion loop that seems to take place in culture is a bit of a problem that we have in North America, certainly.
I was just really reflecting on that idea that you have to experience space to really understand it and appreciate and value it. I think I'm very interested in phenomenology in architecture, which is the notion of how structures and spaces impact you on a subconscious or conscious level. And I think it involves so much, the way the light comes in, the detail in the shadow, the way you move through a space, the tactility of it, the thickness of a wall, the way the sound bounces around. All of that is having an impact on you, whether you're aware of it or not. So I think if we're able to have better quality design accessible to the public, I think there'll be a great appreciation for it, because when you look at photos of architecture, it can look all very much the same. But once you're in it, only then, I think, do you really understand the nuances and the differences.
Kelly, I'm curious. I know some of your work, and I know that some of your projects, you're using the most amazing material and products that goes into it that are also very expensive. But I also know you have done projects that are very, it's still gorgeous, beautiful, but it's much more economical. Could you comment on that a little bit?
Yes, our work really ranges widely in price. We have done some, quite a few years back, but $200 a square foot, and today the prices range up to 1,000 or possibly more per square foot. So it's I don't think good design is just expensive. I don't at all. It's really about the lines of thought that's going into it. We did the Story Pod, which is a small lending library in Newmarket. It was a pro bono project, and we spent our off hours doing it. And I think it was actually built partially by the people of the town of Newmarket. So it came in at a very very good cost. It wasn't expensive at all, and it's such a loved building. It's not even really a building. I'd say it's more of an insertion in the park. But people just they just enjoy going to it. It's a destination, and it's the idea. I think it's the story of lending a book, and that's the sustainability behind that as well, rather than always new, but also just having something that's not something that's really well thought through by an architect, I think, or a designer of any sort. I think you feel it. It's you register it somehow on your subconscious, and you just feel very comfortable and peaceful. I mean, in our work, we strive for that feeling of peacefulness and serenity, and each architect, I'm sure, has a different approach to that, but you feel who they are. I think you feel the hand behind the work when you experience design.
Is really beautiful, Kelly, and I think there is something that's all sustainable. It's something that stays for a long, long time, and people love. I mean, sort of go back and in history, some of the most iconic, beautiful buildings today, I think, are the pyramids in Egypt. I mean, that's a long, long time ago. I don't know how long time you're sorry, but it's nice when you can have something that stimulates people. That's very important. I think we have to close. Unfortunately, there's lots of questions. I will try to distribute them, and we will have to talk to them a little bit later. But I think we have to close, unfortunately. Does anybody want to have the last little word, or are we okay to go? Okay. Then I want to thank you all very much for contributing to this debate. It's really, really interesting. I think the conclusion is design is hugely important, and we as a society get richer from good design, and we have these institutions that help train the next generation. Thank you very much, panel, and thank you all the audience for participating, and goodbye. Enjoy the DesignTO.